Okay, next let's look at creating an entity. Okay. And once again, you select entities here and click on an icon from here. So let me see, click on a pickup. Now you can edit it here if you like. Okay. Edit, and you can change directions whichever way you want. Okay, and then click OK. So now you have, because new is checked, it's automatically created a record for you. Okay, so if you uncheck new and then click on the icon, so the revised icon is picked up there. Now you can give any name you want. So it's, of course, default name is pickup. So you say this is customer. Well, of course, if this is customer, then you really want a human icon, something like that. Of course, if I click like with the new checked, it's going to create a new record. And you see that since there is already customer, it appended a to distinguish the second record from the first one. And I didn't want that, so I'm going to right click and delete the record. Okay, uncheck that and click this icon, so that goes in there. Okay, and we have customer. Okay, and you pretty much don't need anything else. Now, if you define path for the customer to take, and if that path has some, if there's an elapsed time for the entity to go from point A to point B along the path, then this is the speed that will be used, because the speed is feet per minute, and you can change that if you like. But the models that we're going to look at, remember we only have 3 weeks, so we're not going to go deep into that. So speed doesn't matter for us. And statistics, again, you want time series statistics because you want the status of the entity over time. Uh, and we want statistics to be calculated on that basis. So you do want that to be time series. And if you want any notes for documentation purposes, you can type that there. And other than that, we are done. I mean, you can have as many entities as you want. It's going to just create those entities one after the other. Okay. So once you have an entity and a location, so you need these two first, at least one of each, and then you can define arrivals. So click on arrivals. Now, there are two things that we need for arrival. So what is going to arrive? Here's the entity. And where is it going to arrive? So if you click here on the label, it's going to give you a list of all the entities. And you can select, if you have a list of them, you can select whichever entity you want to define the arrival for, then you select that. Or if you want to define the whole, for all of them in just one record, so all of them will arrive at the same time or according to the logic that you provide. But let's do one at a time. So customer is the only entity that we have. So customer. And then we have location. Okay, again, if there are multiple locations here, you can select which location the arrival is going to occur, at which location. So here, of course, we have only one. So we select that. And then we can have how many customers will arrive at a time. So you can have a fixed quantity, or you can have a probability distribution here. So you can have a binomial distribution or a Poisson distribution or your own distribution if you want. We will look at that later. If you have a discrete distribution that you want to use, you can define that discrete distribution, and according to that distribution, the quantity, the number of entities uh, per arrival will be generated. And then first time, okay, so when should, if there is a delayed, if a particular entity arrival is to be delayed by a certain amount of time from the start of the simulation, then you can specify that here. Okay, so we're going to just leave it blank, which means it will arrive whenever it arrives according to the arrival logic. Now, occurrence. Okay, so here we want to put infinity. So this means that during the simulation duration, the customers will continue to arrive. Okay, so there is no limit on the customers arriving except the time during which you're going to do the simulation. So usually we will leave it at infinity. But if it is supposed to be some kind of inventory that you have, and once it runs out, that's it, then you can put that number there. But for our purposes, we will put infinity there. And frequency is the probability distribution in terms of when the arrival is to happen. And typically, you will use exponential distribution as the time between arrival. So suppose if it is on average, every 5 minutes according to exponential distribution, then you will type E5. And if you just leave it as E5, then the general parameter will be used, which is time. The default time is minutes. So minutes will be used. So if it is not the default time, so default time comes from the general information. Okay, if this is supposed to be every second, then you would put SEC. And if you want to attach any logic to it, so suppose if you want to tag every arrival with an arrival time that you want to use for calculating some metrics, then you can put all that logic here. Okay. And you want, on arrival, if you want the entity to be disabled, and then you want to programmatically enable it later, you can do all that there, but we will leave it at no. Okay, so that is our entrance. So once you have the entity and a location defined, then you can define an entrance, define an arrival. Sorry, you can define an arrival.